Hi, this is Latet Anguis in Erba, a reading of Vergil's third Eclogue by Celia E. Schultz, as presented by Laurie Cassell. In Vergil's third Eclogue, the tension is traditionally seen between the two herdsmen, Damoetas and Menalcas, but Schultz makes the case that it's really between the two herdsmen on one side and Palaemon, the judge in their singing contest, on the other. Palaemon understands and values art and pastoral poetry and is in tune with his surroundings, but Damoetas and Menalcas do not. They don't fulfill that pastoral ideal of the herdsman. Our two herdsmen, Damoetas and Menalcas, open the poem with some bickering banter, with some very bitter undertones, not at all in keeping with the harmony expected in pastoral poetry. Instead of the open contest of poetry found in Theocritus' Idyls or in other eclogues, these two herdsmen immediately exchange ad hominem results, not the merits of the poetry, but the insults against the men. Menalcas begins by calling Damoetas a poor herdsman, calling his flock unlucky and Damoetas a cheat for over-milking this flock. This over-milking cheats the lambs and ruins the flock. No food for the young, no future for the flock. To elevate that insult, he then mocks that Damoetas fears his girlfriend prefers Menalcas to him. Right there, we've taken out the rustic ideal of a perfect herdsman. We've gotten rid of the love ideal, that your girlfriend loves you, and he's zapped him twice. These insults are aimed at the basic tenets of pastoral poetry. In this ideal bucolic world we expect, which would be in harmony, love would prevail. A poor herdsman also violates that tenet, as does this less than ideal love. Damoetas replies, but does not deny either of the charges, choosing instead to insult Menalcas. This is unusual. Instead of responding to the charges, he deflects and denies. He fires back with allegations that Menalcas was on the receiving end of some male attention, welcome or unwelcome, in a shrine, while the goats and the nymphs watched and laughed. Certainly goats and nymphs are part of the ideal pastoral world, but not as observers of perversion as seen here. And laughter from the goats and the nymphs? As Schultz observes, Menalcas, like Damoetas, does not deny the allegations, choosing instead to deflect and change the topic right back. Menalcas laughs off these charges and says that must have been the day he was hacking up Mycon's vines with his spiteful pruning hook. This action is definitely not in keeping with the tenets of the harmonious bucolic world we'd expect. Here Menalcas is at odds with the natural world and with Mycon, the owner of the vines, not the peaceful situation we should see in a pastoral poem. Next, Damoetas charges Menalcas with more destruction, the breaking of Daphne's bow and arrows, out of nothing more than pure jealousy. Schultz asserts that this is an attack on poetry itself, especially the love found in pastoral poetry. The bow and the arrows are indeed the traditional symbols of Eros or Cupid, and breaking them is a betrayal of the pastoral harmony we should see. If Menalcas is destructive, he ups the ante by calling Damoetas a thief for stealing the goat. So far we've gone from, your girlfriend likes me better, to, you're a thief. Not pastoral behavior. This, interestingly, is the only charge that Damoetas rebuts, saying the goat was his. He won it fair and square in a poetry contest. In fact, even the man who owned the goat before acknowledged that he'd won the contest, but couldn't afford to pay him the goat. Of course, Menalcas is not going to see this fair and square. He doesn't enjoy the poetry contest. He mocks and devalues it, saying Damoetas can't play the pipes, doesn't own one anyway, and couldn't play it if he had it. Instead, he says, Damoetas plays an oat straw at the crossroads, and plays it badly. Same oat straw we saw in another eclogue? Oh, and now it's on. Damoetas proposes a match between the two of them. Damoetas is willing to wager a productive milk cow. Now here he's united the pastoral poetry ideal with the rustic ideal. He's willing to wager a proven milk producer, quite a quality wager on the quality of his poetry. But Menalcas refuses to wager a heifer, nor any of his flock at all. Menalcas does not equate rustic ideal and pastoral poetry values, says Schultz. Poor Menalcas cannot wager any of the flock, and as this flock is watched over by his father and his stepmother, who count the flock twice every day. Do they not trust Menalcas, or are they just worried about theft? Here, Vergil has made a change from Theocritus' original, in which it's father and mother who are counting the flock once a day. Instead, this stepmother, traditionally an evil figure in Greek and Roman literature, is counting them twice per day. Menalcas now proposes a counter-wager. He offers up a set of carved wooden cups instead. These cups are described as beechwood with designs of astronomers. Menalcas confidently names the first astronomer and then admits to a lapse of memory, can't recall the second name. He is a rustic herdsman and does not understand or appreciate the value of what he's wagering, as according to Schultz. These cups are wood, but he uses metalworking terms to describe them, even saying that the vines are laid on top of the design by the lathe, a physical impossibility. Damoetas describes his own set of cups. His cups, like Menalcas, are decorated, but his include mythic imagery, Orpheus. They are both sets unused, both likewise undervalued, and it doesn't seem to occur to either of these gentlemen that they could break up the set, wager one cup each, and still have a set for each gentleman to toast his friends and enjoy the benefits of having beautiful cups. Art carries no value for our rustic herdsman. Damoetas instead urges the wager of the heifer again, as there is nothing to praise about these cups. He's fairly confident he's going to hang on to that heifer, and maybe even win Menalcas, since he has won a prior poetry contest. Menalcas accepts the contest, but strangely enough, neither herdsman agrees or disagrees to the wager of the heifer. In fact, the terms of the wager are left completely unspecified. Nowhere does it say what Menalcas is wagering. Just conveniently at that moment, Palaemon arrives, and he is proposed as the judge. Palaemon, our freshly arrived third party, differs from Menalcas and Damoetas because he genuinely enjoys and understands poetry, especially the pastoral. The first time in the poem, nearly two-thirds done at this point, Palaemon lends the first inkling of beautiful language to the poem. He's quite happy to sit right down on the mollis herba, the soft grass, and let the poetry flow. Palaemon goes ahead and comments on the beauty of the world which he sees around him, a basic tenet of pastoral poetry which neither of our herdsmen have done or will do. The herdsmen at this point could argue over who begins the contest, or the rules of the contest, if there were truly tension between the two of them, but instead they both accept Palaemon's decision for Damoetas to open it, and then Menalcas to continue and go on by turns. Damoetas leads off with a reference to Jupiter and the Muses and equates his couplets to Jupiter's care of the land. This is an allusion to another one of Theocritus' idols, showing he's even a bit educated. Menalcas counters that with a reference to Phoebus, a much more appropriate patron of poetry. Damoetas then turns the couplets to the topic of love and how the Galatea courts him with apples, a traditional love gift, and then she rushes off to get him to the rushes for sex. Menalcas ups the ante again, and he caps it by saying how eager his boy Amyntas is to see him. In fact, the dogs know Amyntas better than they know Delia, his girlfriend. Damoetas then counters this with information that he's saving up his goods for Venus, and he even knows where those wood pigeons dwell. Those raucous-voiced wood pigeons are back. Menalcas tops this with his gift of apples, 10 apples at a time to his boy, a gift which he can repeat over and over as he knows where to obtain apples. The herdsmen here are trying to sound literate and like successful lovers, but there's a touch of bitterness underneath. Galatea flirts with Damoetas, but Damoetas wishes for better than Galatea. Menalcas tends to the hunting nets, while Amyntas actually goes on the hunt. Damoetas wants the gods to hear his prayers concerning Galatea, and Menalcas seems to be demoted here from master to servant because he's in charge of the nets while his boy does the hunting. Damoetas wants the girl Phyllis next. He wants to get her from Iolaus, possibly her pimp, and would like Iolaus as well, and invites him to join them after this heifer's sacrifice. His own heifer, the heifer he's winning from Menalcas? Not specified. Menalcas counters that by asserting that he loves Phyllis most of all, and that she reciprocates that love. Here, our herdsmen vie to prove themselves the better lover. But not only are they sharing between the two of them, there is that fourth party Iolaus involved. Love talk is pastoral, but this love talk misses that pastoral mark. Finally, in line 80 of 111, the description of the world around them enters the contest at last. But, typical of our non-pastoral herdsmen, it's first brought in a negative way. Damoetas raises the bad things which could happen: wolves, gales, rain on the ripe crops, the wrath of Amaryllis, and Menalcas counters with his first and only positive view of nature, mentioning that nature nourishes: water on freshly sown crops, feed plants for young winged kids, willow for the brooding ewes, and Amyntas for him. Pollio the consul is now brought into it, not in person, but just mentioned as appreciating their rustic muse. Somehow Damoetas implies Pollio is slumming it by appreciating bucolic poetry. The rustic over the pastoral poetic influence is reinforced by the offer of a heifer sacrifice to sweeten the deal for the muses. Livestock is again valued over the poetry here. But just in case that heifer isn't a good enough offer, Menalcas says that a bull sacrifice would be better for Pollio's style of poetry. Pollio's poetry is mocked as an inversion of the Golden Age. Oh, there's flowing honey and brambles growing spikenard, and then we're milking he-goats and yoking up foxes. Damoetas and Menalcas can't resist this one. Going a step further, the natural world, the pastoral idyllic, is seen as a source of potential danger instead of the Golden Age world. Damoetas warns children away from picking strawberries because of the potential, mind you, snake hiding in the grass, that latet anguis in herba. Menalcas wants to protect his flock, so he warns them away from the water which would nourish them, a distinct contrast to the usual imagery of water in the pastoral world. Damoetas takes it a step further, he's got to up that ante, and he warns Tityrus to drive the goats away from the water lest they fall in, but he'll take them one by one to the spring for a dip. Menalcas tries again, and he raises the danger from the natural world by mentioning how heat will turn the flock from being successful milk producers. Heat which could be countered by that cool water. From losing milk, Damoetas now ups it again. Here comes more threat from the pastoral world as his bull is starving despite the presence of available food, vetch all around him. The bull is wasting away from love, ruinous to both herds and herdsmen. But Menalcas says no, it's not love at all which is ruining his flock. Someone has cast an evil eye on his tender lambs. Magic worse than love. Seemingly having exhausted their personal woes and the topics of their flocks and their love lives, the herdsmen now change to riddles. Damoetas wants to know in what lands the sky has a limit of 3 ulnas, and if Menalcas can answer that, he'll be an Apollo. Menalcas' riddle asks which lands are native to the flowers inscribed with the names of kings, and he'll hand over Phyllis. Damoetas asks an astronomy question which Menalcas can't answer, and Menalcas asks a mythic question which Damoetas can't answer. Palaemon interjects here to close the contest, claiming he's not fit to judge tantas lites, such great lawsuits. Here we've brought the outside world, the realistic world, into the pastoral world. He makes our herdsmen happy by awarding a heifer to each of them, as they value livestock far more than poetic accolades, and more than those beautifully artistic cups they don't understand. The contest is over now that the fields have drunk their fill. Palaemon understands and appreciates poetry, rustic poetry, and the beauty of nature in contrast to Damoetas and Menalcas, who can't see or understand the art and the beauty, only the mercenary value of their herds and the danger of the natural world. Schultz has clearly made her case with the unity of the herdsman's views in opposition to Palaemon's views, not the usual source of tension ascribed to this poem as a contest between the herdsmen. The texts referenced herein come from the Latin version, the English translation, and Celia Schultz's full article, also attached to these screenshots. Thank you very much.